All right, let's start. So I hope you're all well. Most of you, some of you might already know me a little bit. I will just spend 1 minute explaining. Thank you, Shankamitra, your mute worked. Just telling you a bit more about me before we start. So my name is Pauline. I come from France. I moved to Kolkata, where I'm calling you from today, around a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. And I have studied and worked in sustainable development related fields for now almost 10 years. So not only did I study, but also I've worked in different organizations that focus on sustainable development. This is not, so I come from France, moved to Kolkata. Now I work at Techno India Group as sustainability director. So one of my main responsibilities here is to develop the opportunities for the students and different stakeholders of the group to learn, discover, understand, work on sustainable development related issues and projects. This is my main responsibility. And also around a year ago, we also founded another venture called WIST, which is basically an aggregating platform for professional organizations in the social and environmental fields to connect together and network together and collaborate together further. That's all for my introduction. Let's go directly to the topic. So I need all of your brains to be activated until 6:30 because
my question, ma'am, hello.
Yes.
What the purpose of this webinar, ma'am? Please tell about yourself.
Okay. I just introduced myself and I am going to dive into the topic of sustainable development for you to better understand what is it and why it's important. Because it's an online webinar, I will ask all of you to be on mute and to not ask a question unless you're asked to, okay? Otherwise, it's going to be a bit messy, all right? So if you have questions, there are question breaks during the presentation where you will be invited to ask your questions. And if you still have questions at the end of the webinar that are still unanswered, I will take them at the end of the call and we can keep talking one-on-one after the call as well, all right? So let's go ahead. I will share with you some slide. I will share my screen with you so we can go through the content all together. Okay, so I prepared a few slides for today, especially for today's webinar, for you to better understand why this is so crucial that you understand this sector. Okay, if you don't know about sustainable development, it's a little bit as if you didn't know about digitalization or AI revolution or machine learning, etc. This trend is as big as it gets, and all of the companies, all of the organizational stakeholders, all of the governments nowadays all around the world are trying to think more sustainably. So this webinar is super important for you to understand. You will see on some slides on the top right corner, you will have a raise your hand kind of little icon. This is the slide where I will invite one or two of you to actually raise a hand and answer a question. Okay, I hope the raising hand, how do you say, functionality will work. If it doesn't, I will ask Aparupa to help me on this, who is on the call, okay? So let's start. We'll start slowly to make sure everyone understands. Oh, someone raised hand. Okay, awesome. That means it works. Identify a few problems that you observe in your daily life. It's a very basic question. So I will ask Swadesh Sen. Can you unmute your call and tell me how you would answer this question?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. The pollution is the main cause, first of all.
The pollution? Okay, sure. Where are you based yourself? Are you in Kolkata?
No, ma'am. I'm in Purulia right now in my home. I talked with you yesterday.
Oh, you are? Yeah. Absolutely. Good to hear from you again. Okay.
Yes,
and is the pollution very bad in your area as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so that's definitely one of the main problems, especially in Kolkata. It's very prominent that we face is pollution. And tell me one reason why we have a lot of pollution among others.
Due to too much of vehicles.
Okay, transportation
Yes,
and
ma'am.
vehicles that are
Ma'am, where we
emitting
can.
CO2 emissions.
In some of the places we can use public transport, where we use our private transport more.
Sure, yes, absolutely. So taking public transportation would tend to reduce the emissions compared to everyone using private vehicles and cars. All right, I'll take one more hand. Identify a few problems. Let me see. I can't see who raised their, wait. Okay, Manish Patak. Can you unmute your call? Good evening. Hi. How would you answer this question?
Ma'am, I think drinking water is the most important problem.
So what kind of drinking problems do you know about?
Means in summer, pure drinking water is not available in every locality.
Okay. So what is it polluted with?
Yeah.
What is inside the water?
I'm from Ranchi, Jharkhand, and in Jharkhand, Ranchi, water content I think iron particles are mostly in presence in water available in Jharkhand.
Correct. So depending on the area where you are, you may find iron, you may find arsenic, you may find some plastic and microplastic, depending on the different economic activities that are around this water source. Very good point. Thank you so much. Everyone, mute your call. We're going to keep going with the presentation. Thank you so much for the participation. There's more question coming. So you start understanding that first, the world is not perfect. The world is facing a lot of challenges that are detrimental to human and environmental health and well-being. All right, are we clear on this? I hope we are. We are surrounded by beautiful things as well as huge human, social, and environmental challenges that we may want to think about and try to adjust so human and nature can actually thrive longer. Okay? Now, a key term that I wanted to introduce here today with you is the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene, so it comes from the Greek anthros. Anthros means human, okay? So the Anthropocene refers to the current geological and geographical age, which basically is defined by a huge impact, environmental impact coming from humans. Never in history humans have been so negatively impactful or influential towards the environment. So these last hundreds, thousand years, especially because of increasing human population, our impact on the environment and on our own human environment has never been so strong. All right, this is the Anthropocene. This is the age and era we are in today. Okay. Okay, so I'll take one answer. Raise your hand for everyone who wants to try and define sustainable development. Ramachandran, can you tell me how you would define sustainable development?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So are you able to hear me?
We can, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
My career passion is also towards sustainability. So to define sustainable development, I would say embrace the world embracing towards the circular economy or towards the circular design. So that is one way to define the sustainable development, giving we feeling the consciousness to contribute to the society in a clean environment. So that is one part of sustainable development to me, embracing the circular design and moving forward and replacing the traditional design towards the circular design, like waste management, things like that, reusing the products.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. So Ramachandran, thank you so much for your input. I will reformulate what you said, which was very true. One part, but not all, one part of sustainable development is called circular economy, which is basically the following. So traditionally, and even still today, we are positioned into what we call a linear economy. That is to say, we produce, we consume, and we waste, we throw away. This is how we work. This is how consumption has been working in the past decades, okay? Circular economy, especially in order to reduce the waste at the end of the chain, is all about reutilizing the waste into the production process, so there's no waste into the process. Yes, we will go back to this particular concept a little later. Now, thank you so much again, Ramachandran. I want to focus on a couple of things before we go into details. What is the difference between sustainable development and sustainability? The main difference is that sustainable development is the process that will allow us to reach sustainability as a goal. Now, one is the process, one is the goal, but essentially the concepts and topics that it includes are exactly the same. So it does not really matter if I say sustainable development or sustainability, I am referring to the same thing, except sometimes I can focus on the process in more than the goal. Okay, this is the main difference between these two terms that we tend to use in different contexts without exactly knowing what they mean. Now, I would like all of us to go back to the word that we find in sustainable development and sustainability, which is sustain, okay? Sustain, what it means is to last longer in time. You're able to sustain yourself if you're able to earn a livelihood and you're able to survive in time. It's exactly the same concept that we are talking about here, okay? I will give the mic to Manish Kumar for a few seconds. Do you have a question, Manish? Manish Kumar, you raised your hand. Okay, so we'll keep going because again there will be some question break during the presentation. So sustain is our ability to last longer in time. And again, if we go back to the very same topics that you mentioned, that is to say problems in terms of drinking water, problems in terms of pollution, if we don't tackle these issues, we will not be able to sustain too long. Our generation is already suffering, especially in terms of health, from these problems, not even talking about our children and children who will also have even more difficulties to survive in such a polluted, challenging environment. All right, so let's keep going. There are defined sustainable development, and these definitions are relatively easy to understand. Okay. Sustainable development was first coined as a term in 1987 through the Brundtland Report, or called also Our Common Future, as the development that meets the needs of the present generations without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. That is to say, if we are polluting water, of course, our future generations, our kids will definitely struggle to find drinking water at all. Okay, in the same way, if we use all of our fossil fuels, for example, oil, which is a non-renewable energy source, there will be nothing left for our future generations. So it's about trying to consume and to meet our needs today without having a negative impact on our future generations to satisfy their needs either. Okay, that's the strict definition of sustainable development. It is very hard to really act upon it. Why? Is because if I ask you, especially if you don't have kids, but if I ask you how many times a week do you think about your kids, you will tell me zero, especially if you don't have kids, because our brain is not wired to think long term. We're thinking about ourselves, which is okay, it's human. We're thinking about ourselves. We're trying to figure out our own problems and challenges. We're trying to think about our family, existing family, and help our parents. We're trying to figure out a career path. How can we think about people in the future that are not existing left yet? So sustainable development requires us to think long-term, to think 100 years, 200 years ahead, and see if in this span of time, we will have resources left for the future generations, okay? Second definition, which tends to be my favorite one because it's very colorful and illustrated, it's this framework. If you don't know this framework, it means you're not reading the news or researching around enough. It's a globally well-known framework issued by the United Nations in 2015 that basically enumerate 17 rules for us to follow as individuals and as a global organization and society in order to obtain a more sustainable world. Let's go through them a little bit together. Rule number 1, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnerships to achieve all of the other goals, okay? All of these topics fall under what we call sustainable development. Why? If you pay attention to here, what's interesting is that usually people tend to mix sustainable development, to associate sustainable development with environment and environmental issues. It's only a part of the problem. If you see this particular framework, it also includes social issues like reduced inequalities or gender equality or no poverty. So when we talk about sustainable development and our ability to sustain in time, we're both talking about social and environmental challenges and how to solve them. It is very important to understand. Of course, if we pollute our environment too much, we will jeopardize our opportunity to sustain. But if we also don't pay attention to, let's say, economic inequalities, and we let poverty thrive and completely get disproportionate between rich and poor, it will also create social tensions, social wars, and conflicts among humans that will also compromise our ability to sustain in time. So it's also falling under the topic of sustainable development and sustainability, okay? That's the second definition that you can use when talking about sustainable development. Do remember this particular framework. Okay, I will take one answer. Which SDG, that is to say sustainable development goals here, one of them, which SDG do you most relate to? Do you care the most about? I will take one answer. Someone? Swadesh, you've already talked. Okay, Rajesh Guria. Rajesh Guria, can you hear me? If you can, unmute your call and answer the question.
Sustainable development.
Okay, wait.
Hello, ma'am.
Can you repeat? Yes, Rajesh. Which one?
Sustainable development goals, ma'am.
It should be the affordable and clean energy.
I have two people speaking. I'm only talking to Rajesh Guria. Okay, Rajesh Guria, can you repeat your answer?
It should be the affordable and clean energy. Point number 7.
Okay, so that's the one you most relate to. Can you explain why you think this one is particularly important?
Because according to the industrial development, most of the industries are used renewable energies, right? But we should focus on the non-renewable energies, right? Because from the renewable energies, there is many more pollutions that happen, and for that case, the atmosphere, sustainable balance of the atmosphere is devastated for this type of pollution. That's I'm specified the point affordable and clean energy.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. So there's one point where you're really right on something, is that oil and gas industry that associates with non-renewable energy source is the #1 polluting industry around the world. The second one being actually the textile industry and what we call fast fashion, our ability to, you know, we've somehow reached to a point where we just buy so many clothes that this industry of textile is the second most polluting around the world. The first one being oil and gas. So thank you so much, Rajesh, for this. You can mute your call. Thank you so much. Just one mention here. It's not because Rajesh pointed out that he thought clean energy was the most important one that you cannot feel stronger for another one. For example, some of you may feel very strongly about gender equality or economic inequalities, etc. Okay, so this is the third and final definition of sustainable development, which is a little bit more applicable to the business world and how industries and companies work. It's called the triple bottom line, which corresponds to 3 P's, which is the people, the planet, and the profit, okay? Or in another way said, social, economic, and environmental. Traditionally, businesses have tended to only give attention and importance to their profit and how much money they could make. Now, because we have more and more realized all of the social and environmental challenges that the world is facing, companies are urged and encouraged both by governments and their own customers to also, to also give importance to people, that is social, and planet, that is environmental. Okay, so one of you will answer the following question. Do you know of any companies which embodies the 3 P's, which is known to encompass and care about people, profit, and planet, and not only profit? Devilal, can you take the mic? Devilal? Okay. Galaxy M30. If you recognize your name, Galaxy M30.
Actually, ma'am, hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Actually, I forgot to rename the name. My name is Ranjan Kumar. I'm from Dumka Engineering College. Okay. I think Tata Industry.
Okay. Why do you think Tata Industry embodies the 3 P's?
Because they take maximum of the profits. Actually, I'm not comfortable in English, ma'am. So
it's okay. Just answer in Hindi or Bengali. Everyone will. Someone may translate to me afterwards, or at least it's important for everyone to hear you. So go ahead in any language.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Actually, जो टाटा इंडस्ट्री है वो ज़्यादा अपने मैक्सिमम प्रॉफिट्स को एनजीओज और खुद के जो सोशल वेलफेयर जो डिपार्टमेंट उनके हैं, मतलब कि उसमें वो दे देते हैं सारे, इसलिए.
Okay. I think I understood the essence of what you said. Basically, Tata is known to put a lot of their profits back into social projects, which is very true. Yes, it's one of the very few companies, especially in India, that has a very, very strong CSR policy. What we call CSR means corporate social responsibility. I don't know if you've heard about this, but in 2013, there was a law that was passed in India that that forces big companies to put 2% of their net profits per year into funding social and environmental projects. And even in its own DNA, I feel Tata had already this CSR or corporate social responsibility kind of DNA even before the law actually was passed. But now it's a legal obligation in India to put some funds into sustainable development. So it's a great answer. Now, Tata is tricky because they're into mining, etc., which are highly polluting activities. But at the same time, you cannot forget their kind of social involvement as well. So it's kind of a controversial case. A lot of people would think about Wipro, for example, as one of the companies in India that tend to really embody the 3 Ps. Now, one more hand to be raised on one company that really does not embody the 3P idea. Any company you can think about that really does not care so much about sustainable development. Ramachandran, go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. So thank you for the opportunity. So I work for Accenture. So
yeah, great.
So yeah, in my company, so we embrace this sustainability at UK. So mainly they have launched a book called the New Circular Economy Handbook, where the company is giving a lot more importance towards this new circular design, circular economy, taking the profitability into CSR activities as well. So I myself, I'm a volunteer for CSR. So who's coming and volunteering their heart out for CSR, they are recognizing in the form of ACE awards for heart out for the Indian who's volunteering as a citizen. So there are a lot of encouragements, taking the profits and transferring it back to the people who are the most in need. So I see my company are undergoing those 3 Ps that I have worked under for 5 years now.
Super. It's a great example for the first question. Thank you so much for sharing, Ramachandran, on this. Actually, you would realize that it's very hard to find about one big Fortune 500 kind of company that is not involved at all in CSR and sustainable development funding. Now, if you don't, then your PR, your public relations, and your image and your brand reputation tends to take a hit on the fact that you are not taking sustainable development into account. Now, the law in India only applies to big companies that go beyond a certain level of annual profits. It's legally, that means that typically SMEs, small and medium enterprises, are not falling under this law of CSR obligation. And so there are a lot more SMEs that do not really or do not even have to invest in CSR. Okay, let's keep going. This slide is probably the heaviest slide that you will see on this presentation, but I wanted to give you a little bit of hard knowledge about sustainable development in history and how the concept kind of emerged throughout these years. It really started to take shape in 1972, which is one of the bold dates that you can see on this particular timeline. In 1972, you have this gathering of scientists and government officials under the name of Club of Rome, who were the first to ring an alert on the limits to growth, as they say in their report. It was the very first, very strong publicly announced alarm and warning about what was there to come in terms of sustainable development. Before that, of course, it was not the very birth of sustainable development concept, but before that, it was more implicitly present into religious beliefs and how religion have been used to tackle nature and respect nature as an environment for spiritual practices. So this was present in religions, and you might also know about Thomas Malthus in the 18th century, which is one of the most famous economists that first kind of tackled the issues of sustainable development, saying that the growth of resources, typically food, is too slow compared to the growth of the population, which it tends to be a lot more exponential. And so there comes a point in his analysis, there comes a point where the resources and the sustenance is not up to what all of the human population needs. So that was the premises of sustainable development like kind of thinking. Put yourself on mute, everyone. I can hear a few sounds. Yeah. So 1972 is a date to remember as the emergence of the Club of Rome and the first alert. Now you have 1987. I'm only going to stress about the dates that are important here. 1987, I told you earlier, it's the first time that sustainable development was coined as a term in the Brundtland Report. Then you have 1992 with the Rio Earth Summit and the creation of a few bodies under the United Nations, just like the UN Commission on Sustainable Development and UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Let me remind you here that most of the work that is done in terms of theory as well as practice and implementation is done by the United Nations, okay? And actually guided by the United Nations. The United Nations is this body, again, that created the 17 rules that I told you earlier, okay? 1997, the Kyoto Protocol, which is also a very, very famous date in the framework of sustainable development, which is where a lot of countries, almost all countries around the world, ratified and agreed to reduce their carbon emissions by I think 10 or 20 years. And this date, this deadline was actually fully, again, extended a few years later because they realized that it was probably too much of an ambition. In 2000, you had this framework called the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, that was framed by the United Nations. And this framework was replaced by the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that we saw earlier in 2015, okay? So you have most of the dates around under your eyes now. If you have any questions, again, keep a note of it and I will try to get back to that. Okay, actually question break. I will take 2 questions. Don't hesitate. Deepak Kumar, raise your hand. Deepak Kumar, can you unmute and ask me a question?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, Pauline, and thanks for accepting my hand.
Sure.
Yeah, do you think the solitary economy can bring to sustainable development or reach the sustainable goal if we follow the solitary economy?
The solitary economy, can you define that for everyone?
Yeah, the solitary economy that involves the development of the local consumers or farmers, where there is not much of other process involved. For example, sourcing it within the community for the people and only for the, not in the bigger volumes as the demands and the production meets together.
It's a very interesting question, this dichotomy and this dilemma between the global economy and local economies. So Deepak, I will try to answer this question. It might be slightly subjective, but the way I understand it is global economies, the way we know them today, our abilities to fly, our abilities for all of our resources to be flown all over the world, our abilities of countries to actually source raw materials from Africa to Europe, from South America to Europe, from Africa to the US, etc., etc. Usually there's this trend that goes from developing and emerging countries to the developing countries.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think as much as I see the advantages, I also think it's one of the major sources of unsustainability in terms of pollution, in terms of digging the gap in between social inequalities between different countries, knowing that through these particular movements, you have countries that became completely dependent on the demand that was coming from the developed countries, and therefore they didn't have any negotiations in terms of pricing. So there's actually this movement which already started, which you know, that tends to go back to local economy, especially, for example, in France, in my country, quite a few people that I know now have started to grow their own vegetables and fruits
potatoes and vegetables. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm also from Paris. Yeah,
in their own garden. It's actually a lot healthier, it's cheaper, and it reduces pollution that tends to mainly come from logistics of all of these resources going around. And I think also, there was one case study that I studied when I was back in Paris, which was super interesting. That was about Amazon. Amazon is probably one of the companies you can cite that does not really embody the 3 Ps. Right? Why? Is because they're not well known to treat their employees very well. So the social or the people part of the 3 Ps is not really respected, and because they are delivering all over the world in terms of logistics and pollution, they are probably one of the most polluting big companies all around. And in this case study, we actually studied how Amazon, by enabling home delivery, completely destroyed local neighborhoods and local shops and people's habits to actually go buy a book 2 meters away or buy their fruits 10 meters away because they could get it at home. And so I think going back to a solitary economy or a local economy would kind of revive local neighborhoods and create more tangible social links between communities. That's my take on it. A very good question.
Okay. Great, thank you for explaining.
I'll take one more question if you have any. One more question. Otherwise, we'll move forward. It was a brilliant question. Okay, so we will actually move forward. I'm letting you see this. So this is a map that shows the CO2 emissions that are growing and growing and growing over time. So we started in the 18th century, and we're going towards the 2000s. So it started in Europe and the Industrial Revolution in the UK, then it spread across Europe, the United States. It starts in Japan as well, and now it's starting to really take off in Asia. Kolkata was one of the first cities to actually take off as well in terms of industrial activity. And now we're coming to current times and era, and we see that the increase never stops. It gets to the red and it will stay in the red, right? So this is a very visual and interesting image to have in mind. Is in terms of pollution and CO2 emissions, we are in the red and we are not getting any, there's no going back, is one of the main messages from this particular image. One of the things that I want to tell you here is we just studied sustainable development. Now we're going to make a little detour on climate change and global warming. So you will understand throughout the presentation that sustainable development includes all of the 17 rules that we saw with the 17 SDGs, but a lot of these challenges actually stem from what we call climate change and global warming. For example, we'll see another one. Okay, this is another visual that I want you to see, which is exactly the same that we saw, but except it's on temperatures. So it's getting hot in here. The Earth since the 18th century, 19th century has increasingly gone hotter and warmer and warmer. You will see in the last decades, again, we have reached the threshold of no return. And again, this particular map stops in 2015, which is already 5 years ago. We're in 2020 now, and probably this map would go a lot warmer over the past 5 years only. So this focus that I'm doing on global warming is really because I understand it as one of the main components of sustainable development related challenges. Why? Is because of course, you know the mechanism of climate change and global warming. What happens is, again, the sun rays goes onto Earth, and what usually happens is they reverberate. They are sent back to space. They bounce back from Earth. What happens is, because we have polluted the air so much on the atmosphere, what happens is the solar rays go through, they bounce back, but they are blocked. Before they go back to space, they are blocked by so many greenhouse gases that we have been emitting for so many years now. So the result is the rays and therefore the heat stays under and within the frame of our atmosphere, which which creates global warming. What it does now is, with global warming, rising sea levels happen, especially through ice melt on the poles. And I'll tell you a little anecdote here. My partner, called Megdoud, some of you might know of him. He started really caring about sustainable development when I showed him a documentary called An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. And one of the passages of this particular movie was showing the lands that would disappear under rising sea levels in just a couple of decades. And one of these areas was Kolkata. And so you have to understand that can you mute your call, everyone? I can hear some noise. Mute your call. You have to understand that if we don't tackle these challenges of global warming and sustainable development as a whole, it will get back to us and to our neighbors and to our city that will face so many challenges and potentially disappear underwater. Okay, so why should we care? Again, I told you a couple of answers or a couple of insights. Can one of you just raise a hand and tell me why we should care about sustainable development? It can be a bit subjective. There's no one answer, good or bad. But why do we care so much? Why is this webinar so important? Can I have maybe one hand raising to just share your opinion on the same? Anyone? Why is it so important? Why should we care? Why is it important that we should, make sure that this is not getting warmer and warmer on Earth? Anyone? I don't see any raising hands. Can you please mute your call, or someone wants to answer? Why should we care? No one knows. No one wants to express an opinion.
Yeah, I want to express, ma'am, but I'm trying to raise my hand, but I'm not sure it's not reflecting in your end.
Why can't I see it anymore? Okay, never mind. Thank you so much for intervening. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing, the first and foremost, why should we care is that this will help us for the next generation. So moving forward, staying sustainable will make the next generations to embrace the reusability or the circular economy, which I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This will move on to the next generation. If we keep polluting our environment or not embracing the sustainability, nothing will be left for our next generation to have a look at it at first place. So that's the reason I care for the next generation.
Absolutely. So you are very sensitive to this. There are some people that may tell you, but I don't care about the future generations. They're not existing yet. I don't have kids and I care about myself. What do you say to them?
Yeah, the first thing is, they are being selfish at the present, but it's not only for the next generation, but even we can see the impact, like the virus, or that we are in a global pandemic. It may come and it may come and haunt us right there. So the black swans, we will not. I'm not sure the term. If the others are aware of the black swan. So the uncertainties that may come up, which again we are facing the unprecedented situation right here. So I intend to take back all this because of the not embracing the sustainable format, being there and there. We cry for the profitability, we cry for the then and the earnings to survive the period of time, but we are not looking at things way beyond in the bigger picture, what we are doing back to the society in terms of killing each and everything. Nothing is going to take back. So that's one thing very emotional to me personally.
So Ramachandran, thank you so much. We're touching upon something that is very important in sustainable development, is how we communicate about it and how we plan to convince everyone else that is not so sensitive as you are. And we need more people to understand the importance of it. And the main challenge here is how to make sustainable urgent, important, and sexy when we communicate about it. How to make it as sexy as talking about AI robots? How do we make it as sexy as a Simon Sinek talking about corporate methodologies? How do we make it attractive and important to the eyes of people? And you said, maybe depending on your audience, some may not react to, oh, let's care for future generations. If they don't, there are some arguments that we can use today to make them understand how important this is. One of them being health issues that we are experiencing right now. So we'll go a bit further into this. Why should we care? Yeah, Ramachandran, you want to add something?
Yeah, one more thing, ma'am. So how I can convince the organization to take up is that I've read the recent report saying that customers tend to buy the products more when they feel when that is going to get contributed to the society, or when it is bringing up more sustainable products. So the organization can embrace sustainability when they show up sales, when they show up profitability. I feel the trending of the current generation has been turned towards sustainability. When you show value for the product, when it is not contributing towards sustainable, customers tend to buy the product very less than if it is. They look for the CEO's vision. They look for the company's vision. Like, if it is not going to benefit, I see the customer is not buying the product also. So that one way you can convince the organization to embrace the sustainability.
Thank you so much. You're right to say that definitely sustainable development will definitely be influenced by our consumer behaviors and by the perception that we have of brands. Now, there's a lot of theory and practice that shows that companies would tend to follow more sustainable practices if consumers actually show that they care about sustainable development and, for example, stop buying from a company that is not very sustainable. So we'll see, down the line later during this presentation that as consumers, we can actually claim the importance that sustainable development has for us. Let's keep going. Why should we care? Let's go ahead. First main reason is everything is connected. It's not sustainable development is about our future generations. Sustainable development is about pollution. It's, as I was telling you earlier, it's both about social and environmental solutions. It's about our own health and the environmental health. It's about today and tomorrow. So we'll see how everything is connected. I'll take one person to raise a hand. Aparupa, if I don't see hand raising, can you tell me, help me identify one person? I'll take one person to tell me or to identify one connection between two SDGs.
Nobina Gupta, I can see your hand raised. Would you like to give this a try?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, what I feel is what you've been saying is about this connection is very important because we at times we do not like, we were talking about human behavior. It happens that unless until there's a catastrophe that happens and there's something very drastically that affects us, we react to it. That's what is happening now. Like, unless until it hit human beings that they got scared and they really reacted to things.
Yeah.
So if we do not at this moment realize that the connection exists everywhere in each and every issue that we see in these 17 goals, each of them actually connected with the other one.
So can you give one example, for example?
Let's take climate change and maybe good health and well-being.
Absolutely. Can you explicit it a bit more?
If we look into climate change, we know that there's so many changes that we all have been reading and talking about. But as an individual, what does a person really do about it? Do we really take those small steps that would really bring in change in the whole society, well-being? Even if we cannot do something for the whole world, but we can definitely do something in our own individual lives and in our own environment around us.
Absolutely.
Which would actually lead to. So I think the self-activation is a very important part we should remember. And if we are activated, we will be able to inspire many more in the process. And I think that's how we could make connections between people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes people that I talk to, and it happens to me as well, we get overwhelmed by the concept of sustainable development and where to start, and isn't it the companies or the governments to do something? But
Yeah.
actually what is in our hands is what we can control, and at least controlling this and making it a personal effort is where the change really lies at the end of the day. I was reading an article a few weeks back saying that if you set an example, you have the power yourself, you have the power to convince, let's say, your mom and your best friend and your brother, and then in turn these three people would influence the mindset and the behavior of 5 other people each, and then the change through individual behaviors can actually be huge. And I think this is true. What you say is, in order to remain focused on both how we can tackle sustainable development and as well as also responding to our global citizen duty of pay attention to all of the resources that we take as one person, I think the sustainable development issues will actually get better. One thing that I want thank you so much, Nobina. One thing that I want everyone to understand here, and this is very much part of the sustainable development mindset, is every time we consume, every time we use energy or resources for our own consumption, it does take away consumption from someone else. By that, I mean we are on one planet which has limited resources. I will give you an example. Remember we talked about circular economy earlier during this call. There is a foundation called the Ellen MacArthur Foundation based out of the UK that specializes on circular economy. And Ellen MacArthur started this foundation because she was a sailor. She's a very famous sailor. She has sailed all over the world on her boat. And what she realized is on her boat, on her own, for weeks and weeks of travel, she had to deal with just a limited number of resources to sustain until she reached her destination. It's the very same way for planet Earth. If I consume, it means I will have less for someone else, or I will have less in the future. So every time that you consume, I really urge you to think, if 7 billion people consume the way I consume, is there a problem? If I waste, or if I leave that amount of rice and food waste in my plate, and 7 billion other people do the very same, can you imagine the huge problems? If I keep wasting or using 2 plastic water bottles a day, and everyone does the same, can you imagine the scale of the problem? So set an example for yourself. I won't do it, because if everyone does it, sustainable development will take a hit, and it already does. Very good point, Nobina, on all this. So back to our point, everything is connected. I'll give a couple more examples. When I was working in Rajasthan a few years ago, I was doing a study on the field with farmers of Rajasthan that, of course, struggling with their water supply, especially due to climate change. So climate action rule number 13, the monsoon and the rainy season had shifted over time during the seasons, and sometimes some years there was no rainy season or rain at all, which in turn meant that they were not able to develop as many crops as they would need to survive, which also meant that they did not have as many revenues at the end of the month or at the end of the day as they would need to actually sustain themselves. Hence, there's a clear connection between climate action number 13 and no poverty number 1. It's one of the other connections, and you could draw like traits between all of these and figure out different connections. It's neatly, tightly connected. Again, as just putting words, other sustainable development related words on it. If we have increasing temperatures, then we have increased sea levels. Then it also plays on resource redistribution, fauna and flora ecosystem and how they move, human migration as well, human and animal migrations, food system, how much water and drinking water we have access to, etc. So environment is connected to social, social is connected to environment. Environments brings human challenges, humans influence the environment and pollute it more. So it's a whole vicious circle, right? This is a set of different articles that will illustrate these different connections. So you see on this graph that the more the global temperature change and increases, the more the yield, the crop yield goes down. So the warmer, the less the yield is one scientifically established connection. This shows how animals have migrated from their initial home to another home. This shows the Asian tiger mosquito coming for Northern Europe, while it's called Asian tiger mosquito. So there are some abnormalities that have come up from unsustainability. Climate change means more frequent flooding, heavy rain and flood warning for whales, Cape Town drought. So you might know Cape Town has been very close to level 0 in terms of how much drinking water is available. In the same way, cities like Chennai or Bangalore have been facing different water tensions and water scarcity. Bread prices set to soar as wheat costs rocket in the face of drought. So climate change gets the crop and the yield to go down, which means that the wheat prices go up, which means that the bread that we find in boulangerie or in markets will also be more expensive for us, and then will play on our purchasing power. Can you see how everything is connected? India's dried out rivers feed spate of water wars. So this is an interesting one. It means that because of water scarcity, there are human tensions to really fight over water because it's becoming scarce. China floods to hit the US economy, the increasing of extreme weather instances all over the planet. 30% of coral died in catastrophic heat wave in 2016. Tens of millions of climate migration and climate refugees that you probably know of this topic. Again, climate refugees issues. One other example that we can cite here that is a lot more recent is the COVID-19 crisis. So what I will do after this call, what we will do with Aparupa is we will send an email with different links that I will be mentioning during this call. One of them will be a very interesting article that was written that was about the ecology of disease. That is to say, the virus actually came from our infringement on nature. The article mentions, I think, that 60% of emerging virus diseases are coming from animals. And the reason why they go from animals to actually end up affecting us is because we've most probably stepped onto a territory that was not ours. Human territories have gone so much overboard on environmental homes of other species that, of course, viruses that affect certain animal species come to us. It's a very, very interesting article that we will share just after the call. Okay, so reason number one, everything is connected. It's a lot more complex than you think. And if we don't pay attention to this point, it will actually go back to us, okay? Second point on why we should care about sustainable development, and it's that it's not getting any better, okay? It's a scary thought to have, but why isn't it getting any better is because first, the ideas of, as we talked about, climate change, and global warming, etc., will remain aggravated by an increasing population, an increasing urbanization rate, as well as an increasing part of the population that will have the purchasing power to buy more, to consume more, to waste more. So because we're going to be more on the planet in the years and years and years to come, this is not a variable that I think we can think it will go down anytime soon. It means we really need to find alternatives of consumption so that we can sustain. Can you imagine the current the current situation with 7.5 billion people nowadays, that will soon be 10 billion people probably by 2050, can you imagine how bad pollution and consumption habits can get by then if we don't readjust our consumption behaviors and our production behaviors as a society? Okay, so this is not getting any better. This is a very interesting graph that I wanted to show you. It basically shows that, let's say, if 7 billion people behaved like Bangladeshi people behave and consume today, the green area would be the land that they would need, that 7 billion people would need to satisfy their needs. What's interesting is you can see if everyone on Earth, that is to say, if 7 billion people were to behave like Americans do, for that matter, for example, we would need the equivalent of 4.1 planets to meet the basic needs of everyone. France is not too, it's not really good either, with 2.5 planets needed to really meet everyone's needs if everyone was to behave and consume like French people. Again, it's not getting any better. So we better take action now in order to, as we say, flatten the curve of sustainable development related challenges in the future, and in the very near future, and in the present. Phew, question break. Aparupa, can you help me get a couple of hands? Maybe 2 hands, if there's any question among the audience.
I can see Shruti Raj has raised her hand. Would you like to ask your questions now? Shruti Raj.
Shruti? Can you hear us? Do you have a question for us? Do you want to share? Shruti
Hello,
Raj.
ma'am.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay.
Tell me.
Ma'am, actually, this is a problem, but we as an individual can help, but not everyone is understanding this. So how we could spread this awareness among all? Because this is not a small problem, and not everyone is taking it seriously.
It's a great question, Shruti. I am afraid I am not the magician that will give you, will be able to give you the answers to all of the problems. What I can tell you is, it does not really matter if people know or do not know about the term of sustainable development. What matters is the kind of products and services and behaviors that we spread as individuals, and as well as from corporations, need to change. And I answered this question at the last webinar. I think it really takes individuals to really make the change. It might be you in your own family starting a composting unit in your garden, or you know, moving from, I don't know, it's examples, moving from sanitary pads to a menstrual cup, or stop you know, the use of plastic water bottles. It might be that, and you influencing your whole family on how to embrace more sustainable practices. It also takes, listen, it also takes well-established companies that are not in sustainable development services or products per se, and their leadership to actually change their practices. It can be saving energy and water on their own premises, trying to limit the transportation or arrange transportation for employees to the company, etc. Let's not be too hopeful. There's no utopia. We won't be able to solve sustainable development issues by tomorrow. But it requires us to try and change the established realities into something more sustainable. And once this particular change of habits has actually happened, and new habits are actually getting formed, this is when sustainable development happens in the long term. And this starts by parental and school education as well, right from a very young age. Education is one of the most powerful tools right from year 0 in order to really embed the mindset and good habits into kids. Yeah,
ma'am, but in India, most of the people are uneducated. So how we could make them understand about the sustainable development? How we can make them understand about this importance?
Can I? Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say that Shruti, I think, who just now spoke about like the community who is uneducated and how do we make them sustainable. I would like to add one thing over here is like communities, if we think about communities, they have led a much more sustainable life than us who are in urban cities and, you know.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Nobina.
I think it's very important that we look into these communities not as communities whom we have to teach. Rather, we have to learn a lot from these communities. And of course, it's an exchange that we need to build up where there are things that they have adapted in the name of being recognized by us, in the name of being more acceptable by us. Because we could go to a puchka shop and demand for a better cutlery than a dona, which is made out of natural leaf. So, you know, these habits have changed.
It's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
This exchange has to be, this relationship has to be built in where we do not consider them as uneducated and, you know, and not knowing about sustainability. But if we really look deeper, we know that they have much, much more sustainable practices, which we should adopt in our daily life.
Absolutely. A couple of comments that it makes me think of is first, especially I see the difference, especially you know, from France to India. In France and in most developed countries, you have really this culture of the supermarket culture, where literally you cannot go buy anything without using you know, plastic packages or plastic bags. When I see here and how the household I'm in here in Kolkata goes to the local market with a reusable bag, etc., it's a lot more sustainable. So there's also this idea that whatever the developed countries are proposing on the table is not to be followed. And actually, there's, as you said, there's a lot that can be learned from more ancient, more traditional practices. Actually, before the plastic was invented, not so long ago, I don't know, probably in the 40s or the 50s. And before that, we had alternatives to plastic. Of course, plastic was convenient, but the inventors of plastic really did not sustain their thought and really think ahead on the fact that every piece of plastic produced is a piece of plastic that will be in the environment for decades and thousands of years in time. So great points. Thank you so much. All right, let's keep going. We have a couple more points to go through. Just to remind you, we are trying to see why we should care about sustainable development. First reason is everything's connected. Second one is it's not going any better. Third one would be it directly affects our health, not only the health of the future generations, but also tomorrow, our health today. Okay, so this is just a series of some situations that we can observe on a daily basis around us that really shows us that that our health can be affected back. If let's say animals that we end up eating, it can be beef, it can be fish, etc., are also eaters of plastic, at the end of the day, first we should care about their health because they are also living being, but it would also get back to our health and in our own system. I don't know if you've seen this movie called A Plastic Ocean, but it's strikingly and made very clear and very well made, where they've studied the stomach of. Can everyone put their mic on mute? I have some noise. In Phoenix Hot 8, can you put your call on mute? Everyone, I can't see who. So thank you so much. In this Plastic Ocean documentary, they actually opened the stomach of typically fish and birds that had died from taking in too much plastic, and the human equivalent of what they had in their stomach is as if we had, or a human would have had, 7 to 8 kgs of plastic in the stomach. So it's especially river and ocean pollution gets to tremendous animal mortality, as well as gets back to our health, because we end up also eating some of these animals. This is another photo of how it can affect our health. Some of you, one of you earlier during this call had mentioned the availability or non-availability of drinking water. We can see this river very polluted in the background, and this kid who doesn't have any resources to get drinking water, that actually directly drinks from the polluted river. This is one that I really like. It shows it's in Hong Kong, and what they did in Hong Kong is they put a backdrop showing the very same skyline that you see at the background, but instead of showing the reality, they're showing just a reality with blue sky, in order to I guess through social media and different photos promote or hide the realities of high pollution in Hong Kong through this particular backdrop. I don't know if you know, but before COVID-19, Kolkata air pollution, AQI, air quality index, tended to oscillate between 300 and 500, compared to other cities. And the context is different, the challenges are different, but just to give you a little bit of perspective, Paris is about 60 to 70 AQI. So there are definitely some solutions that we might want to put our brains on in order to work on sustainable cities. This is definitely, air pollution is one of the main detriment to our health. There was this article a few months ago, I don't know if you saw, that said if you live in Kolkata, it's the equivalent of smoking 22 cigarettes a day at a bad day. So definitely getting to your lungs. There is another illustration that I like to explain in that way. So unfortunately, not only do we live in a polluted world, but we also live in an unfair world in terms of social inequalities. And what the tendency that we see, the trend that we see, is that the richer you get, the more you can consume, and therefore the more you can waste. And it's very convenient for the ones who can afford to actually consume and waste and get rid of the, let's say, the plastic waste in a bin. But one has to think, it does go somewhere. Everything that you throw away in the bin does go somewhere. And unfortunately, what we can observe is it usually goes to poorer communities, that ends up affecting the health of the communities that live on riverbanks or in, next to a landfill. I don't know if you've seen, maybe you have, or you've heard of it. With a few friends and volunteers, we started this project called the River Rangers last September. And since last September, every Sunday we have gone back to Malik Ghat in Kolkata, and every Sunday we've done cleanup and public awareness drives. And I can tell you, sometimes it's as dirty. The Ghat is as dirty as it is on the picture. And I wouldn't want anyone or anything or any living being to be living in and around this dirt. So this is a screenshot taken from a course given at Harvard, which is also available online for free. I can send you the link, which basically takes the stand that in order, as I was saying, to highlight the importance of sustainable development, we need to use health to convince other people of the importance of it. So we see that through different earth systems and mechanisms, different conditions and diseases can be affected, namely allergies, maternal and newborn outcome, heat-related diseases, respiratory, waterborne issues, trauma, cardiovascular diseases, vector-borne diseases, nutritional diseases, mental health diseases. So all of this, and they provide numbers and different figures on this. Again, refer to this course if you want to know more. Fourth and final reason why we should definitely care, and to me this is one of the most interesting to really realize, is It says a lot on how unethical we've become and let ourselves be. We are, and I fully understand that it is sometimes very difficult to implement and to embrace sustainable practices, even as an individual, especially when you have this huge fight between sustainable development practices and the consumption and consumerism. That is pushed by marketing, pushed by ads. It's all over the place. We are pushed to consume more and more, while sustainable development says less is more. And I think it requires courage to not fall into these consumption patterns that make no sense whatsoever. And again, I am not saying that I reached my peak in terms of sustainable development. There are still some, of course, a lot of areas that I have myself also have to work on, and I keep trying to readjust and be more and more sustainable in the long run, but it's a whole journey of change. So I'll just go through a few photos of how absurd consumption patterns have become in some cases. So I was talking about fast fashion earlier. Fast fashion is about this trend in the textile industry that makes it very easy for us to buy more and more and more and more, because the prices has gone of clothes have gone so down that you don't really care about a piece of clothes that is worth like €2. You don't give any value to the work and the material that is going into that, because through lean processes and optimized logistics, they have managed to take the price so down. And so it leads to these kind of closets. I don't know, a few years down the line, a few years ago, I didn't have so many pairs of shoes, but I would definitely recognize myself back then in being very prone to getting into fast fashion kind of models. And it just does not make sense for one person to have so many shoes in his or her personal closet. It's absurd. It's as if a family of 2 people had 10 cars. We're not made to accumulate. We have no use of it. And consumerism have taken us to absurdities. This is one thing that I want to really strongly mention here. This is a bit more difficult to explain. What I want to explain here is sometimes we just forget that the reason why we're lucky in life is mostly because of where we are born. And the reason why other people are not lucky in life is because they were born in the blue zone on the photo. So the photo shows Dharavi in Mumbai, and how slums and skyscrapers are just like one street away. And if you're lucky enough to be born on the right side of the street, then your life is not figured out, but almost. And if you're born in the blue zone, it becomes a lot more difficult for you to make it in decent conditions throughout life and to even meet your basic needs. And because for some reason, for different very complex reasons, we as a society have ended up embracing and agreeing with the idea of capitalism and mechanically our ability to accumulate wealth, then among other reasons, this is what created so much gap between different individuals. And no one has decided where they were born on Earth. It's just a lottery game. And so there's a lot of talks and debates currently about how to keep the advantages of capitalism, but go ahead into what we would call an ethical capitalism. We will see a few examples of, especially through social business, we can actually embrace both capitalistic values as well as a bit more social and environmental ethics. Another example is this photo. Quite a few of you might say, oh, this is It's great. Two happy people taking a drink, like a beer or an apple juice. What strikes me with my mindset, and I know you think the same, is why on earth would we have two plastic straw per glass? Right? I mean, one is already absurd enough because you can definitely enjoy a drink without a straw at all. But two, I mean, there's no rational reason behind this example of consumption behaviors, and yet sometimes we do not observe enough around us, or we do not dare to say, hey, don't give me any straws. It's sometimes very hard to speak up. And I think this is the courage that I was talking about, is we need to speak up. More and more I try to, every time that I'm handed a straw, I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want any on my table, and please call the manager so I can tell him or her that I won't come back if they don't change to more sustainable solutions. So it requires to speak up. It requires to go against absurdities that somehow we have embraced as a society. So why should we care? Everything's connected. It's not getting any better. It affects our health, and it has let us become unethical as a whole. And I think we could do better for all of the negative consequences that it has, and for all of the positive reasons that a more sustainable world would actually bring about. There's this company that I am part of called the SASICO. Actually, after my studies in sustainable development and social innovation in Paris, our class was so bonded and was so close that we decided to keep working together, and we together as shareholders and partners created the SASICO, which has become a sustainability consultancy based in Paris. And they've come up, the communication team has come up with this very true line, I think, is just let's stop being sorry, let's just be better and start taking action, even if this action is about us as a first step. It's always something. Very recently, I discovered a green tech platform based out of New York called UCapture. What UCapture does is it basically gets you to install a Google Chrome or a browser extension. And once you have installed this particular extension on your browser, every time you shop online on one of their more than 20,000 online partners, not only can you get access to coupons and therefore discounts on your final price, but also part of your purchase, small part of your purchase, every time you buy something with these associated partners online, will be used to fund what we call carbon offset projects, which basically are aiming to bring the CO2 emissions down at the global level. So I will stop sharing this particular presentation to take you through what it looks like online. So basically all you have to do, which is very simple, is you go on ucapture.com/yeast, and then you click on add uCapture on your browser. All right. So now you will get proposed to add this to Chrome or to whatever browser you are using, and it will appear on the top right corner of your screen, and it will get automatically activated every time that you visit one of these associated partner websites. So thanks for joining uCapture. You can see how it works and go through the walkout demo. So let's say whenever you arrive on one of these partner websites, you click to activate uCapture. And then when you check out, when you're actually billing out your purchase, you can apply different coupons that uCapture takes care to find for you. And then you go back to checkout. So that's how simple it takes. And then on your personal account on uCapture, you can actually find and see different projects that you can directly support through your online purchases. Usually The one that I saw the other day was the only one that they have for now in India, which is the Mitra wind power, which I select as of now, but I can, go back and change it later on. Continue, finish, or I can share it on social media, which actually gets me some more point on my personal UCapture account. And I am now part of the UCapture community, where I can see also my individual position based on compared to different individuals that are already using UCapture. So it's also slightly gamified, which is absolutely great. So I really, really encourage you to just set up this browser extension, and it's as easy as it gets. It's free for you. And it actually is good for the environment while you're, as usual, making your purchases online. All right, so let's go back to our presentation here. There you go. So we were supposed to have a question break, but because I'm recording this very last 5 minutes on my own because of the technical glitch, we'll go ahead without the question break. I really wanted to finish off this presentation by focusing on solutions, being hopeful, being optimistic that things can change at a macroeconomic level. And this, I think, will take a lot of organizations, bigger and smaller, to actually move towards more sustainable practices, or actually get born and being within their DNA, at their core, focused on sustainability. So here are just a couple of examples that you could have in mind in order to illustrate more sustainable development and practices. For example, Grameen Bank, which most of you know as the founding organization for microcredit, founded, I think, around the year 2000 by Mohamed Yunus out of Bangladesh. And as all of you know, microcredit is all about providing loans to people under the poverty line so that they can have just the financial accessibility that they need to be able to start off their own small business that will get them out of poverty, or at least that was the initial intent behind microcredit. You have Gravity Labs, for example, another example, brilliant. I love this example because it's one of these examples of businesses that actually have integrated two solutions or two positive outcomes into one solution. What they did is they came up with an inverter, like a converter, that they put on exhaust pipes of cars, and the CO2 emissions that go through this converter actually gets converted into ink for artists. And it basically also, not only does it serve the purpose of bringing down pollution, but it also helps creating a resource for an underserved sector, which is the art sector. So brilliant, brilliant. You have the Ocean Cleanup, which is this organization and this very inspiring founder that came up with this boat that is basically cleaning rivers and banks and ocean banks. You have another one, Loop, which you can see on the top left corner. Loop is this new relatively recent initiative that is now taking off in the US, in UK, and in France. And it's basically a partnership between different big MNCs, typically L'Oreal, typically Coca-Cola, all of these big brands. And what they do is Loop organizes a pack of such consumables and goods for your own consumptions at home. And whenever you're done with the products, instead of taking the packages into the trash, you put it back into this box that they delivered to you earlier, and then they refill the packages to you, which are therefore reusable, and they deliver it back to you again with filled items of your morning juices or your shampoo or your soap, etc., etc. So also very, very smart initiative. You have Barefoot College, the orange feet that you can see in in the center of the slide. It's an NGO that is based in a small village called Tilonia in Rajasthan, and the founder, what's his name? Bunker Roy. He went through prestigious studies in Delhi, and he decided to let go of everything at some point to settle down in this little village in order to provide better access to drinking water through digging water wells to the region and to the villages there. And now it has become this bigger NGO campus in Tilonia that does many different projects, and one of their flagship project is called the Solar Mama Project, which is basically they welcome batches of 60 women each for each batch, and these women come from all over the world, so from Syria to Mexico to Burundi to Vietnam, blah blah blah. They all gather together. They usually are illiterate, and they go through a 6-month training program for them to master solar energy and to be able to electrify their villages back to their country. So also a super interesting and smart initiative. Ellen MacArthur Foundation is one of the organizations that we mentioned already at the beginning of the call, that is specifically focused on what we call circular economy. And there are so many examples. So some of you might wonder, okay, if I want to put some of my professional time or actually develop a career in sustainable development, or relatedly so, there are more and more opportunities for you to get involved, because mechanically there are more organizations that are born from sustainable concepts and that are increasingly focusing on it. So really keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, do a bit of research around you and see who are the organizations, companies, or not-for-profits around you that would be in line with your goals and the causes that you have at heart. Yeah. So that's more at the macro level. What's happening is there's this trend, this background trend that brings more and more businesses to invest resources into more sustainable practices. But then when we take it back to our own individual level and what we can do from today onwards ourselves, there's a lot of things that we can do. I don't pretend to be able to tell every little action that we can take, but as I was saying earlier, it's really important that we take a step back. We look at our consumption patterns and all of our consumption points during the day, and we wonder, okay, is there something that I can do otherwise without consuming or wasting that resource? It can be energy and electricity, it can be water, it can be replacing plastic with more sustainable or biodegradable products, it can be really moving out of single-use plastics into reusable items. So, I was telling you earlier about this really clash between sustainable practices and consumerism. Single-use plastic is really the epitome of this, in a sense that for companies to sell single-use items, it mechanically gets the consumer to buy again, because once you've used it, it's over, and so you need more. And this is partly how companies also manage to maintain their profits high. So to some extent, in most cases, going from single-use items to selling reusable items would actually kill their short-term profits, which is why there's such a reluctance from the businesses to switch, right? But when you take as a consumer, only the offer will follow the demand. So we have that in our hands if we have the capacity to turn to more sustainable practices. It's crazy to realize that the use of a plastic bag is only limited to 12 minutes on average, and then we just throw it away. It's just back to this ethics and this ethical perspective that I was trying to bring earlier, and how absurd some consumption patterns have become. So again, it's all back to how we can observe, how we come to realize what is going wrong or what could be done more sustainably in a better manner. And then once the switch is done in just a couple of weeks, you are good to go to implement that in the long term. So that's all I wanted to say on this particular slide. Maybe one more, even beyond your own consumption patterns, you can also see yourself as an ambassador of sustainable development by getting personally involved in time and resources and skills and brain cells with these organizations like WAIST, like all of these ones that we have, getting involved with them and putting some of your own resource to the benefit of these organizations to become an ambassador of the topic. And we definitely need more and more brain to be able to really look at and find solutions to these very complex problems. It's not only about awareness and understanding the basic concept, it's really about hard skills on how to tackle these challenges. We need brains. To close it off, I just wanted to offer you some actionable points that you can actually activate right now. One of the ways that we've done this at WAIST, which is the venture I work with, is that we put up a program called the Remain Committed from Home program, where we try to offer you as many opportunities as we can to keep up with your sustainable development related involvement, even if you're stuck at home during the COVID-19 pandemic. So here is just a couple of examples, but again, there are many more that you can find about. So we've started a fundraiser under the platform Give India, which is one of the biggest fundraising platforms in India. And what we're trying to do is every time that we are providing you with a knowledge opportunity or a webinar, even if we provide it for free, we encourage you in the email, you might have seen it in the email earlier today, I think. We encourage you to really try and give value to the knowledge you got from these webinars and your opportunity, not to remunerate us, but instead to provide a little bit more funds to people that really are in need. And so this fundraiser goes to daily workers and their families that have been affected by the crisis. We also, since the beginning of quarantine, with WAIST and partner Offbeat CCU, we have come up with a support group on Facebook for quarantine heroes, which basically provides a platform for people to express themselves and find this particular platform where they can just say what they're up to, or share a piece of art, or share a song, or share a webinar that they know about. Really find this community of people that are going through isolation, yes, separately, but yet all together at the same time. So feel free to join the group. And finally, WAIST has curated through a publicly shared Google spreadsheet online this particular link that you see. It's basically a curated list of opportunities that would allow you to keep involved from your place. So there's a tab called Donate with a list of different fundraisers that you can help out. There's a tab called Participate, where you can get to volunteer or participate into different sustainable development related activities put up by our different partners. There's another tab called get informed and get information from reliable sources. We've also added a couple of links, etc., etc. So go through that document and feel free to really use all of these opportunities that are already actually within your hand and open to you. So I think that's it for me. Question break again. We can't really go through because I am sitting by myself right now, finishing the content to put it online for you guys to access the entire content of the webinar. And I really wanted to thank you for following and focusing on the content with me for an hour and a half. I hope it has been insightful. There are so many more subtopics below or under the umbrella of sustainable development that I really, really urge you to do a bit of introspection, see what are the sustainable development topics that you really relate to, and reach out further to people that are, for example, specifically specialized and expert in gender equality or in climate change and climate action or in river and ocean pollution. Don't hesitate to reach back to me if you have any questions. We have quite a big network, and we can definitely connect you further. But keep reading, keep being curious, and really try and question your own. Let's all try to keep questioning our own consumer patterns and try to set an example in order to spread the message around us first, and that's ideal if you make a career out of it. And I hope everyone would eventually commit some professional time to more sustainable practices eventually. Then nothing like it. Do reach out. We need you to become ambassadors as well, and let's work together. If you have something in mind, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone. Thank you.